And it's lights out. Welcome to the Pitwall podcast, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. I'm your host this evening, Jeanmark, and joining me this evening is my bro, Dominick, my father, Dr. David Kessler, and my esteemed friend, Paola. We have just finished our double header, the Styria Grand Prix followed by the Austrian Grand Prix, both being held at the Red Bull Ring. Let's take a look at our fantasy Formula One results right now. Very similar results at the top compared to last week. Verstappen getting 49 points. The only person who gained positions in the top 10 was Bottas, surprisingly. And shout out to anybody who would have had him on your team. You got a haul of 37 points. Ocon, he started last race in 17th position, just like this race. Last race, he gained 3 positions. Sad time for him. The only driver in the bottom half to not gain positions. Another person that I like to highlight is perhaps the one that came out of nowhere and surprised everyone. Now, if you've been following Fantasy Formula One for any amount of time, you know that Norris has been so consistent. He's been the highest points per million rank, period, and he put it 0.048 outside of pole position and was going to, on merit, fight the Mercedes and almost got back to second place again at the end of the race. He was a stellar performance this race.
I was kind of disappointed in myself that I had not done enough day trading to pick up Perez and add him to my team. The Red Bulls have been really good of late, but it looks like I got the last laugh on myself because by turboing Norris, I ended up with way more points than I would have with Perez. So good work on me.
True.
On accident.
It was a frustrating day for anybody who had both of them, like myself.
It's
cheering
like
for both, but they weren't cheering for each other, that's for sure.
true. I did have them both on my team, and like you said, you're wanting them both do good. So when they got really close, you're like, no! Let's kick it over to our dynamic pricing report. For those of you that don't know what the colors of the chevrons mean, this is just a recap. Orange is your quali streak, blue is your race streak. When it glows, that means that you got the bonus points. If you see a red chevron, that means that they lost their streak this week and shows you what their progression was before they lost it. So Leclerc, if he had qualified in the top 10, next race, he would have been on pace to be able to get his bonus 5 points for a quali streak. Leclerc has been losing value over the last few weeks. Sainz has been going up in value, and Sainz has had 12 overtakes in the last 2 races. That's 6 per race. That is a total of 20 bonus points just off of passing alone. So Sainz may not be qualifying as high, but he's getting tons of bonus points off of overtakes. And so it seems like Sainz is starting to overshadow Leclerc at Ferrari.
Leclerc has fallen quite a bit behind now, and it's unlikely that he'll ever get those top spots if he's starting to think about getting a little riskier, getting a little bit more aggressive. You're just not seeing the same kind of driving that we saw from at the beginning.
That's a good point. I'm also suspecting maybe a similar thing's happening between Ocon and Alonso. Ocon was really strong at the beginning of the year, but Alonso has started catching the car. And so we see Sainz and Alonso who are being more consistent, and then you get drivers like Leclerc and Ocon who might be trying to risk a little bit more because they think they can push the car. They feel comfortable enough to try to push it. And so if Leclerc is taking those risks, he may not be the long-term option. You need stability to have a good fantasy team.
It's funny that you mentioned Alonso. It caught me off guard. He's at 4 in his streak for races. He's done well in these last couple of races, but earlier on the season, I felt like even I was just kind of not really paying attention to him. If he has one more good race, there's going to be bonus points coming his way as well. And look at that, only 10% of people have him. So I feel like maybe that's the case for other people as well.
That's a good point. Alonso might be worth picking up because of the whole Mega Driver situation that's going to happen this next race. And so he might actually be a money pick as well as a points pick. And then he'll get that plus 10 if he's able to get in the top 10 for the race. And then a bunch of people might pick him up. That might be a good option. And Dad, you're already contemplating what your strategies are for next race. Give us a preview.
Well, I was also noticing about Norris being the only one that survived with the race and quality streaks alive. We were thinking about, Hamilton and Verstappen, you get this 15 extra points and mega drive them. Yeah, that still might be an option, but sure would want Norris on your team. It's either turbo him or potentially mega drive him.
Well, so that's the problem with mega driving Norris. Who are you going to then turbo?
I would turbo Perez and hope he doesn't have 2 bad outings in a row.
Well, maybe. The link will be in the description below. This is a spreadsheet I built from the ground up because many of you asked me, what lineup do you want? This is called price point. And here we're going to put in Verstappen. And at the bottom, we will put in Norris. The points per million and the value is greater for Norris, and the positions gained on average. But what we're looking at here is the average points per race. Verstappen's getting 41 points per race on average, and Norris is getting 29. So if Norris gets a power streak, like you described, Dad, that's an extra 15 points. That could make him score more than Verstappen, right? Because 29 plus 15 is 44. But Verstappen is eligible for a quali streak, which is plus 5 points. So Verstappen would still be scoring more points with his quali streak than Norris with his power streak. And that's why I would say stick with Verstappen, because then Norris could still be turboed. And Norris is probably going to get you a decent haul of points or even more points than your Perez. Maybe not your Bottas, but it's very hard for people to afford Bottas and some of the other drivers unless they got a higher valued team.
Yeah, plus Verstappen's probably going to do better in the sprint race than Norris.
Exactly. There's going to be at the Silverstone Grand Prix a sprint race. So not only do you get your normal qualifying, which is where you get your quality streak, then you get the sprint race, which means if Verstappen gets on pole position, he gets 10 points for quali. Then if he does first place for the sprint race qualifying, then he gets, I think, roughly 15 points. And then if he wins the race, he gets another buku amount of points, 25 plus whatever else he would have got. Like you said, if Verstappen's going to beat Norris in the sprint race, then it would be still better to mega drive him and then turbo Norris. And speaking of Verstappen and how powerful he may be going into this next race in Silverstone, let's take a look at the constructors' standings.
I'd say we have a couple interesting close battles here. Obviously, we have Red Bull and Mercedes. That's a classic. We got McLaren and Ferrari. Never 100% sure what to expect from that. A nice new thing I hadn't noticed before, we got AlphaTauri and Aston Martin. All of those drivers have, every race is a little bit different. So it's exciting to see how that goes. Alpine's just hanging out by itself. And let me tell you, Alfa Romeo, you got to be sweating right now because you are only 2 points ahead of Williams and Haas. It only takes one good race for one of them to be ahead of you. I'm looking at you, Russell. Make it happen.
Let's be clear, though. It's really Lando in third and Gasly on fifth. Tsunoda and Ricciardo aren't doing a whole lot.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these teams are really relying on one driver to get all their points. Verstappen is now 32 points ahead of Hamilton. Tell us, Paola, what did you notice? What is the interesting close battle that's starting to appear because of the driver standings?
Norris and Paris, I didn't see coming. Like, just a 3-point difference at the end of this race. Wouldn't be surprised if in a race or two, Norris took that upper spot. But as we mentioned before, if you have both of them on your team, you don't know who to cheer for. And you're biting your nails and you're angry at both of them.
What's your guys' thoughts on Norris versus Perez? Let's go.
Okay, well, we're there. Let's hear your one-word reaction to the Norris versus Perez fight this last race. Bro, your one-word reaction.
Baffling.
Baffling.
During the race, after the race, even today, we have a lot of people asking questions about whether or not that tangle between Perez and Norris was actually bad enough that Norris got 5-second penalty as a result.
Dad, your one-word reaction to Norris versus Perez.
Frustration.
Tell us.
Well, I had them both on my team, and I thought that Norris could have left him a little room. And this is a typical, a dog gets kicked and he goes and bites someone else. Perez tried to get by Norris. He got slammed. He lost his positions and he was irritable. So then he goes and takes out on Leclerc. And it really messed up my fantasy points. So I'm not too happy about that either.
Do you think that the penalty should have been given, the 5 seconds for Norris?
I do, because I think what we want is more wheel to wheel. But one driver forces another driver off the track. How are you going to have wheel to wheel now? So you want the one driver to allow the other driver to have enough space to at least have 2 wheels on the track, even if they can't keep all 4 wheels on the track.
That's a perspective I hadn't seen online. Thanks for sharing that, Dad. Because like at the end of the race, Russell and Alonso, that was great wheel to wheel, but they kept trying to pass each other that same corner, right? And Russell gave enough space so that Alonso had to make a decision, but he never forced him off the track. That isn't wheel to wheel if one guy's off the track. Paola, one word battle reaction.
Annoyed.
Annoyed. Tell us why.
I think I disagree a little bit. I definitely want to see more to wheel action, but I think even Norris says this after the race, like Paris is the one who took the risk. He did it on the outside. He could have waited for a better spot to do that. Really poor decision on Paris's end. So annoyed because that's exactly the type of driving I don't want to see from Paris. The one that makes me nervous to choose him, to turbo drive him, one that makes him seem like a more an emotional driver that can't recover after a mistake early on in the race.
If I can't have the toy, no one can.
Exactly.
My one word battle reaction, and that's timing. Did Perez have to pass Norris when he tried to pass Norris? They didn't even have DRS. For example, Hamilton, he was very patient and eventually passed Norris. Now let's get into one aspect of this race we have not talked about yet, the Mercedes strategy. Bottas qualified pretty good. He and Hamilton were behind Perez and Norris, which wasn't really a thing last race. So Bottas is trying to attack. He actually is able to pass Hamilton as they're both attacking Perez and Norris. And I looked this back on the onboard of Bottas. When Norris and Perez made contact, it actually hit some dirt, some gravel dust up into the cockpit of Bottas. So he had to let off the gas just slightly, which is what allowed Hamilton to get past him again as they came out of that corner. And so then he was just stuck behind Hamilton. And then Hamilton tries to attack Norris. He gets past him. He gets some damage. And then it gets played over the radio. Bottas, we don't really want you to pass Hamilton. Please don't. Norris is attacking, but please don't. And Paola, how do you feel like that? What disrespect?
I couldn't believe that they would say something like that, to be honest. Bottas was like a pal of mine. I feel like I'd sit down with him and have some kind of like, you can't let them talk to you like this. Like, this is disrespectful. Just kind of takes it, or at least I didn't hear a whole lot on the radio. Maybe he's just tired of it as well, or he feels like he doesn't have it out. I mean, the level of disrespect, I cannot handle it.
Yeah, Bottas didn't seem too happy when he was up on the podium.
Let us go to our heroes and zeros. Bro, your hero.
Might be the first time I've ever had a hero that ended up in a lower position than they started, but I just have to give it to Russell. Those last couple of laps, seeing him and Alonso go at it, this is what racing is all about, defending or attacking. I understand that Alonso was able to make the pass with like a lap to go, but it was beautiful to just watch the two of them go at it. And after we saw so many people almost go off the track, he was able to defend without Alonso having to feel the fear that that might happen to him as well. He was unable to get the point for Williams, and that is unfortunate, but it gives me hope for the future and what's to come for him. So hats off to him.
Do you think he will get points for Williams this season?
In my heart, I want him to. I'm going to say yes, just because of the whimsy of my heart.
Okay, quick show of hands if you think that he will get a point for Williams this season. 3, 2, 1, go. So, Paola, you think he'll get multiple points. Nice.
I think he'll do it more than once. I don't think it'll be purely on merit.
Okay, nice. Dad, your hero.
It's got to be Norris because he scored well and he was on my team. I unfortunately did not turbo him, and on the people who placed in the podium all had turboed him. Unfortunately for me, I didn't see that coming, and I wish I had turboed Norris.
And this is your weekly update of the What If section for Dad.
Paola, your hero.
Week, I think Sainz did a really good job. After the race, I remembered that he hadn't even made it to Q3 the day before. think they were really smart about strategy. Definitely skeptic about it at the beginning of the race. Only one of 2 drivers who start on the hard tires. With it, he was patient. He took his time, and all the way up to 5th. I think he should be extremely proud of that. I think that's probably his best yet.
Yeah, and you could see it in the points. He's only 2 points behind Leclerc for the year so far. And so if he continues to be consistent and Leclerc continues to take those chances, he might actually pass him on the points.
For my hero, it would be Ricciardo. Similar to Sainz, he qualified really low. And for him to qualify last race in Q13 and not gain any position, but this race to qualify in Q13 and then gain 6 positions, end up in P7, that's a great improvement for Ricciardo. Not just that, but he was holding down the DRS train for so many laps. He was keeping the Ferraris at bay, he was keeping Perez at bay, no one could really pass him until near the very end of the race. If Ricciardo is able to start building momentum, he may not have the qualifying pace that Norris does, but if he's able to have the race pace, then that can keep McLaren ahead of Ferrari in the constructors. Bro, you're 0.
I'm going to have to go with Perez as much as that pains me. Here's the deal. You could say Perez got wrong. You could say that it was just racing. He lost positions. It was unfortunate, but he knew that doing something like that would get you a penalty. And yet that did not stop him from doing it twice. It doesn't matter what happened to you. If you know it's going to cost you and you do it 2 times, that's on you. I feel that that was a poor decision on his part. I know he was probably emotional, but you got to do better.
Dad, you're 0.
Stroll's my 0. I saw him in quali that he was in the points, and I thought, hey, this is a race. He's going to score some points, and he didn't do that for me, so I was not happy.
Was he also on your team?
Yes.
And he also got 0 points, so double 0.
Wah, wah.
Paola, you're 0.
Me, it's Ocon this week. I'm waiting for the race in which he'll show us his potential again, but the 4th week in a row that he doesn't score any points. He didn't make it past Q1. And yes, it's not really at fault for being sandwiched right at the beginning there, but also perhaps could have been avoided if he had done better in qualifying.
True. I was seeing a meme online. They're like, as soon as Ocon got his contract, he was like, peace, and disappears. Like, he just vanished. Like, where is he? Which now brings me to my 0, which is Tsunoda. Okay, here's the story. I picked up Tsunoda as a money pick. He didn't go up more than 0.1 million, but I was debating between picking up Raikkonen or staying with Tsunoda for the race. And I actually, at the last potential moment, decided, okay, I'll go with Raikkonen instead of Tsunoda. And then quali happened. And then, of course, you feel like, no! Tsunoda is so high up there, I think in 7th position, but he just went backwards. And actually, that kind of is a shout out to my 3 statistical secrets video that I released, because that was this thing that I pointed at. I said, if you look at the last race, he qualified high and then went backwards. Raikkonen qualified low and then went up. Well, that was almost the case for Raikkonen until that crash with Vettel. But yeah, Tsunoda was my 0 because he has such great potential, but it seems like there's a few things he's doing during the race that's keeping him from being able to match, mainly his penalties. Now to It's in the Numbers. We want to give a shout out to the person who got our last It's in the Numbers, and he did it real fast. Take it away, Dad.
Yeah, Tristan Campbell did really well. Not only did he know what that was Aston Martin, but he found that we did an error, which he thought might have been a red herring. Shout out, that was great. But he did kind of think that it was a little too easy. He got it real quickly. So don't be surprised if this week's significantly harder so you guys have more of a challenge.
You guys want it more difficult? You're going to get it. This week's It's in the Numbers. 0.527-29.942-10. And you're going to try to tell us which drivers are these numbers referring to, and the hint is that it's race day for Styria and Austria.
So if you think you know what those numbers are and you're brave enough to leave it in the comments, go ahead and do so. We will take one of the comments, and if it is correct, we'll give them a shout out. We'll see if this one proves to be more difficult than the last one. I hope it is.
We might increase difficulty each week. Make sure to explain your answer. So let us now go over to the ORC, the One Race Challenge.
Somebody got second place with -2 points. What?
Shout out to you. It's more like a hobby for me, Kimmy, by Ward V. Ward V tied for the third place positions last week as well, and he ended up with second place this week. That was even with -2 points with Sonoda.
Okay, let me have a rhetorical question for you. What is better than hearing the national anthem of Italy once?
Hearing it
Correct?
twice.
I said rhetorical. The correct answer is you. Yes, thank you for solving the riddle for me, Dag. Okay. I do not get tired of hearing it, so I am looking forward to hearing it at the end of the video.
That is correct. Our first back-to-back national anthem being the same. Shout out to Gia. Last week, he got the Fat Stacks Award for having a $107+ million team. And this week, it actually paid off to have such a big difference in his team value to afford getting 235 points. Put that in perspective, second place got 215, and third place got 213, and then a few people tied for 212.
And he beat the ORC Elite.
That's true. ORC Elite this week with 226 points. That's 98.3 million. And our ORC Elite is calculated if you could have 100 million or less, what's the most points that you could have? That goes to show once you start getting a high enough valued team, you might be able to afford better drivers. But just because you have a more expensive team does not necessarily mean that you are going to have the most points. To illustrate this, we have added a new section in our Google spreadsheet. Now we have a leaderboard. This leaderboard tracks everyone who is eligible to be on a podium. Those that are labeled in green get your fat stacks. Anyone that is green with white lettering are those that beat the ORC Elite. But the tiebreak is merely for your standing on the podium. And the top 3 steps get a special podium ceremony at the end of this podcast. But for the leaderboard, if you tie, you still get points. And we're following Formula One's standards where a gold or a first place will get you 25 points, a silver will get you 18, and a bronze or a third place will get you 15 points. Congratulations, Dad. You are leading with 73 points. That's 1 gold, 1 silver, 2 bronze. How do you feel about being consistent, even if you don't think that you're getting on the podium as often as you would like?
Well, I sure appreciate seeing it this way because I was rethinking about my strategy to try to make the podium, and this helps me understand that there is some advantage to being consistent. So thank you for making this more visible for me to see.
True, because what is going to separate teams from getting on the podium or not is going to be one of those more risky picks or against the grain picks. And so this allows you to be rewarded even if you just play solid. And so, yeah, we want to give a shout out to one man in particular, Johannes G from Denmark. He is sitting at third place with 50 points. From my knowledge, I've only seen him enter into 2 orcs, and that was round 3 where he got gold and round 4 where he also got gold, but he got the fat stacks because he tied the person who ended up on the top podium step. And he was sitting on the top with 2 golds for the longest time. This is an invitation to you. Get back in. We want to see you catch up and overthrow Dad. Give him a chance. Give him a run for his money. Gia, in 2 races, has scored 40 points. So he has cut the lead in half. And I think this leaderboard will help encourage you guys because you may not show up on the podium. And I felt bad because last week, the 2 guys that tied for third place, they had the same team points and the same team value. They were so shrunk, but I forgot to highlight them. So now you can look here and see. Shout out to Corey B and Ward V. And now you can see what those value and what their points were. This now brings us to the last thing I want to highlight for the spreadsheet is if you scroll all the way to the right, they will show the average points per position and then the lowest team value average per position. You see here that they're spread by about 10 points apiece. So if you want to get a bronze in one of our ORC races, you want to score around 204 points. If you want to get a silver, you want to score at least 211 points. If you want to get a gold, you'll be scoring 222 points. And you can see you need to be a little bit more valuable to get into those upper echelons, unless, as Bro pointed out, what is the great irony of getting higher scores?
If you were to go off of these numbers, it almost seems like a high team value is actually a hindrance. If you really want to get the good points, you need to stay under 100 million. At the end of the day, the ORC Elite gets the power of hindsight, and the team compositions tend to be quite sporadic. I would say that more value is still the optimal choice.
While there may not be any Fat Stacks award given away this week because no one tied, we still have a meme team. We already mentioned him, but it was too good to pass up. It's more like a hobby for me. Kimmy.
I have to wonder if the team name was decided before or after the collision between Raikkonen and Vettel. It's actually even funnier after the collision because the response is, hey, it's just a hobby for me, Sometimes you accidentally knock somebody off the track. That happens.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Either that was a funny coincidence or that was excellent planning on your part. So congratulations.
Congratulations for the Meme Team Award. And let's finish this off plugging our current one race challenge for the next GP, the Britain GP. If we get at least 10 entrants, the code will be in the description below. I can update the banner and avatar to be cool, unique graphics. And if you enter and you're able to finish in gold, silver, or bronze, not only will you end up on our ORC leaderboard, but you will get an opportunity to potentially be on our podium ceremony at the end of this podcast. And there you have it. That has been our Austria Grand Prix race reaction. I've been your host, Jeanmark, and thank you for joining me. We've been your knights and racing armor. We'll see you next time on the Pitwall.